2, new point of view. So this question is really just like a thought exercise to get you thinking about NP problems in different perspectives. So imagine that there's some omnipotent prover. So this is some like all-powerful being, and they basically have all the computational resources you could ever imagine. They're unbounded, and they're like super big-brained. Meanwhile, you are a verifier. You're going to be limited to only compute things in polynomial time. So you can imagine this as you, and you're pretty much limited by like the speed of your computer, which happens to only run polynomial things. And you're interested in verifying whether strings are in the language L. So if you've got some string x and you're wondering whether the string x is in L or not, but the only resources you have are your polynomial laptop, but even though you have this computationally unbounded prover, you don't know whether you can trust their answers or not, so you should be verifying them. So you're still here wondering if your string is in X, and the prover tells you that yes, X is in L. And in order to actually prove it to you, using all of their computationally unbounded power, the prover comes up with some certificate U in order to help convince you that the string X is actually in L. So now you've got the string U, which the prover gives to you, and you can use it to check whether X is in the language L or not. So since you are a polynomial time verifier, you can go ahead, use the certificate U along with the string X, and your verifier will either output that X is not in the language, it'll let you know, or it'll let you know that X is in the language. Either way, you run a polynomial amount of computation and get your answer. So this setup is for if L is in NP. So given that L is in NP, the two things we're concerned about is whether the prover can actually convince you for every X that actually is in the language that X is a member of L, and if X is not in the language, if the prover can fool you into thinking that it is in the language. So for the first question, the answer is yes, the prover can convince you because they can always come up with a certificate. And the reason that they can always come up with a certificate that you can run in polynomial time is because L is in NP. If L was not in NP, sure, the prover might know whether X is in L or not in L, but they might not have a way to convince you. They might not be able to give you a certificate that you can check in a polynomial amount of time, and that way they wouldn't be able to convince you, or they wouldn't necessarily be able to convince you if L wasn't in NP. The second question is whether the prover can ever fool you into thinking some string X is in the language when it's not. So think back to the definition of NP. If the string is not in the language, is there any certificate that the prover could give you in order to fool you? And the answer to that is no. Any certificate they try and give you, your verifier will always reject it. So the prover can't fool you in this way. One thing to note though is that even if the string X is in L, the prover could give you some like garbage certificate that makes your verifier reject. But that doesn't necessarily fool you because you know if X is in L, there exists a certificate that causes your verifier to accept, even though that may or may not be the one that the prover is giving you.